Welcome to my YouTube channel. Once upon a time, in the village of California, the villagers gathered outside the king's palace to watch what they called a display of madness. Their Princess Wales, the only daughter of King Ozo, was denouncing her status to marry a Moby. As she left her father's palace, she turned back and waved goodbye to her parents, who were visibly upset, and to her maids, who had served her whole life. Then she continued walking towards a Moby, who was waiting outside the palace. Surprised, a Moby, of all people, is a mere blacksmith. What is so special about him? One villager asked another in disgust. He has absolutely nothing to offer the princess, and the other responds. Wales and Amobi already knew what everyone was saying but did not care. They were in love, and that was final later in the evening. As Wales settled into her new home, Amobi could not help but notice how uncomfortable she was, so with tears in his eyes, he said, "My love, I will make you proud. Do not worry." She looked at him and smiled. Then she turned, reached into her bag, brought out a pouch, and handed it to her husband. Amobi opened it and was shocked to discover a lot of diamonds inside. "Wales, where did you get these diamonds?" In shock, he laughed and asked, "Did you think my parents would send me off with nothing? Let us sell these diamonds and invest the money into your business." Wales suggested. Amobi looked at his wife kindly. Nobody had shown him this type of love. Since he lost both parents as a child, he hugged his wife and cried in relief, thanking God there was a way they could both survive. 3 years passed, and with the investment paid, Amobi became the most important blacksmith in his village. His great reputation also spread to the surrounding villages. The weapons he made were used by kings and great warriors. However, as he became wealthier, he also became promiscuous and, of course, it greatly affected his marriage. Wales tried everything to keep a happy home, but it was not working, and to add to her sadness, she was unable to have a child. Her husband became tired of sleeping with her because, according to him, it was a waste of his effort. She was frustrated that her life was not going according to how she had planned it. All the promises Amobi made had been broken, and every day, she missed her life as a royal, but it was too late. According to the laws of the land, her refusal to marry a royal suitor meant she was from the royal family, and they, on the other hand, were forbidden to interfere in her marriage. Whenever she remembered her mother's words, she would cry bitterly. Please think about this carefully. I do not believe this man has the best interest for you. Her mother always said she finally understood that Amobi may not have loved her. She was deceived by how much he cared for her, and that was why she was willing to forsake everything and everyone she knew. Maybe he always knew her parents would give her a huge parting gift, or maybe he felt marrying a princess was the best thing he could achieve, but whatever his reasons were, it did not matter. It was too late. Amobi had disgraced her, and he had disgraced the so-called love they shared. The villagers also did not respect her because she was always found fighting her husband's numerous lovers. One day, she went to the village market to buy some fruits. When she got to the first seller, she picked up a fruit and examined it, but she was unsatisfied in Wales with its ripeness. So she decided to go to another seller, but in anger, the seller said, "Stupid woman, why did you touch it if you were not going to buy it? I am sure you always annoy your husband, which is why he sleeps with everything in a skirt-bearing woman." Wales was shocked it had become this bad. She could not make her choice in the market without problems. She left the market crying and abandoned the fruit she had initially come to buy. Later at night, Amobi came home, and as soon as he entered the bedroom, he met Wales on her knees, crying. She said to him, "I am very unhappy in this marriage. I know you are tired of me, but please make love to me, so I can get a child. I don't want to feel alone anymore. Please end my suffering." He looked at her in annoyance. "What is the point? Nothing is going to come out of it," he responded, but she refused to give up. Her husband had not slept with her in months. Wales continued to cry, and finally, he gave in. 3 months later, she found out she was pregnant, and Wales was very excited when Amobi heard the news. He also could not contain his joy. He began to make plenty of promises to his wife. "I will always respect you for this gift you have given me. You have my love forever," he said, glowing with pride. Finally, all she wanted was to enjoy the love of her husband, and she was happy that the child was able to bring peace to their home. Just as Amobi promised, he began to care for her, just as they had in their early days of courtship. All was finally well, or was it? In the 7th month of pregnancy, Wales went for her regular checkup at an herbalist's home in the next village, but when she arrived, she was told he was traveling for an emergency. Disappointed, she began making her way home, but as she got closer to her door, she heard a woman laughing. Confused, she opened the door and continued walking to her room. Where the noise was coming from, Wales pushed the door and found her husband in bed with a woman. "Wales, I thought he went to visit the herbalist," Amobi asked in shock. The woman who was in bed with him showed no remorse. She stood up from the bed and in anger, Wales charged at her in an attempt to beat her up, but the woman was stronger and pushed Wales to the ground. Screams, "My baby," screams in pain, Wales screams. The fall induced labor, so she had to give birth to the baby prematurely. Amobi ran to call the midwives, and they came to help her deliver the baby about an hour later. Wales delivered a bouncing baby boy, and the midwife stepped out to call Amobi to see his wife and son, but when they came back to the room, Wales lay there lifeless. The other midwife tried to resuscitate her, but it was too late. She was weak, and her heart was filled with sorrow. There was no fight left in her anymore. Wales passed away. Amobi was devastated by the passing of his wife. He could not make sense of anything that happened, but above all, he blamed himself for his wickedness and killed Wales, the woman who sacrificed everything to be with him. So he swore that he would not associate himself with any other woman. Rather, he was going to spend the rest of his days focusing on his son and his business. "I will honor you for as long as I leave," Amobi would say to himself any time he remembered Wales. Over 20 years passed, and he kept to his word. He stayed away from the women in the village, minding his business. Amobi spent his days taking care of his son Uche, who was now in his mid-20s. One day, Uche went to his father and said, "Papa, I have found the woman my heart beats for. I am ready to get married." Amobi was delighted by the news. He thanked God for such a blessing quickly. He expressed his support and promised he was going to support his son by gifting him a house, livestock, and his business as his inheritance. "When can I meet my daughter-in-law? I would like to see her," he asked in excitement. Uche promised to bring her later that week, and the date of the arranged meeting was agreed upon. Uche brought his wife to Chinaza to see his father, but as soon as Amobi set his eyes on Chinaza, it was like love at first sight. He could not believe a woman could make his heart so warm. "Papa, greetings," Chinaza greeted him. When he heard the smoothness of her voice, his heart leaped in excitement. What manner of goddess is this, he thought, but he quickly reminded himself that he was standing before his son's bride-to-be. The meeting went very smoothly, and once in a while, he would still glance at Chinaza, lusting after her beauty. That night, Amobi refused to sleep. He tossed and turned tirelessly on his bed. Chinaza occupied his thoughts. The following weeks were quite busy. Preparations for the wedding between Uche and Chinaza were in full gear, and every time Amobi saw Chinaza, his longing for her increased. It was like her beauty kept increasing with each passing moment on the wedding day when she stepped out in their cultural attire adorned in beads. Amobi could not keep his eyes off her as she danced that day. He knew he had to have her by any means possible. He was in love with her when the wedding was over. Amobi asked Uche and Chinaza to move in with him, and please just stay with me for a while. There has been a delay in getting your hut ready, he said to them, and they agreed, but weeks went by, and there was no news of the house. Anytime his son privately asked about the progress of the house, he would not give a meaningful answer. I want to add some finishing touches to it, he would say, but in front of Chinaza, Amobi would bring up the topic again, bragging about how his son cannot achieve anything without him at every attempt. He made his son feel less like a man. If I pass away today, Uche will amount to nothing. He even needs me to get a house for himself and his new wife, he would say, teasing him. The way he spoke lowly of his son began to affect Chinaza. She started believing that her husband was good for nothing. She and Amobi began spending more and more time together in her heart. That was the man she needed. She found every excuse to always be around her father-in-law, and Amobi knew that he had finally won her over. One day, he approached her and poured his heart out, and of course, Chinaza reciprocated his feelings. I want you to be all mine. I don't want you for a night or a few hours in a day. I want to marry you, he said to Chinaza, but she was confused. How could that be? She was already married to Uche, but Amobi had a plan. However, he was not ready to share it with her until he was sure he could trust her. So, as the days went by, whenever Uche would go out to oversee his father's business, Chinaza would warm Amobi's bed. They were now madly in love with each other. One day, she told him, I am tired of pretending to love my husband. I wish he could disappear. Amobi smiled because he knew it was finally time to tell her his plan. I can make him disappear, he said, looking into her eyes. Chinaza immediately knew what he meant, and she smiled back at him in approval. So with very few words said, they set the plan in motion to kill Uche. One afternoon, Amobi called Uche and said to him, my son, the beautiful house I prepared for you and your bride is finally ready, but before you move out, I need you to do me a favor. Amobi told Uche that he had to deliver some weapons to the battlefield where two villages were fighting. Uche was alarmed, but Papa, the war was dangerous. I don't see myself returning alive if I go there, he answered, but Amobi assured him that nothing would go wrong as someone would be waiting to collect the weapons before he got to the battlefield. Uche was still not convinced. He told his wife about it, and she said, I think he should go. I want your father to know that you are a man that he can depend on. His wife's words finally convinced him. So the next day, early in the morning, he carried the weapons and set off to his death. Fortunately for him, the assassin Amobi contracted to kill Uche close to the battlefield recognized him. As he hid in the bushes, he thought deeply. He should kill the man he had been sent after or rescue the man who saved him from drowning in a river over a year ago. He knew he had to do the right thing, so he stepped out of the bushes and approached Uche. Are you the one my father asked me to deliver these weapons to? Uche asked him. The assassin was shocked that Amobi never told him it was his son whom he was meant to kill. Do you remember me? He asked Uche, who took a long look at him before he finally recognized him. Surprise, Ugana. I hope you know how to swim now. Ugana forced a smile and asked Uche to sit down for a conversation. When he was done telling Uche about his mission, Uche began to weep profusely. What manner of evil was that a father after his own son? Over the years, I have acquired some wealth. I will give you a share so you can run far away, where your father will not find you, Ugana told him. Uche began crying again. My wife Chinaza. I need to get her so we can leave together. When Ugana heard the name, he struggled for a brief moment. Your father approached me with a woman called Chinaza, but he introduced her as his wife. Uche could not believe his ears. He did not need anyone to tell him what was going on. He always thought that the closeness between his father and wife was innocent. Sigh. His heart was broken. The assassin took him to his house, and the following day, he escorted him to a faraway village where he could start a new life. The man gave him a house, a piece of land to farm on, and some gold. Thank you so much, Uche said in tears. The man shook his head and said, "I am only returning the favor. Remember, you always have a friend in me." Then the man went on his way. Over at California Village, Amobi and Chinaza rejoiced over Uche's demise. The assassin had sent a message saying the mission was successful. Less than a year after Uche's passing, Amobi went to meet Chinaza's parents to inform them that he would be marrying his son's widow, and they accepted because of how wealthy he was. Months after the private wedding ceremony, Chinaza became pregnant, and when she reached her full term, she delivered a baby boy, but not long after, the baby became very ill and soon passed away. "Don't worry, my love God will bless us with another Amobi," said, comforting her. Soon, she got pregnant again and gave birth to another child, but the child died again. "Let's try one more time." He told his wife we needed an heir. So they did, and she became pregnant again, but the time the child lived was past 3 months. And in excitement, he threw a celebration for the child's naming ceremony, but a week after the ceremony, the child passed away. Amobi and his wife were depressed, which seemed to be the problem. Eventually, Wales's mother suggested they both visit the popular medical missionaries who had newly come into the village. The next morning, they journeyed to find them. The missionaries asked them the necessary questions, then they decided to do some testing and discovered that Wales and Amobi were carriers of the sickle cell gene. The 3 babies Chinaza breathed were carriers of the gene, which was why the babies passed away prematurely. The missionaries told them they could still have healthy babies. However, the risk of having more children with the SS gene was not impossible. Amobi was filled with grief, as usual. He realized how stupid he had been. He traded his son for an uncertain future. How did he allow his life to get this bad? The love he thought he felt for Chinaza suddenly turned sour when they got home. He asked her to leave his house because he wanted nothing more to do with her again. "Please go back to your father's house. I want to spend the rest of my days paying for my wickedness," he said to her, and just as he said his days were spent sitting alone in his hut in grief, he longed to hear his son's voice once again. Amobi's final days were plagued with nightmares, and some people would usually say that they heard him begging for his life to end. When they went past his house when he finally died as a lonely older man, the villagers raided his house, taking everything precious to him, and his home turned into a den for thieves to hide out. Thank you for listening to this story today. I will leave it to you to tell me what you have learned in the comment section and subscribe to my channel. If you enjoyed this story, please like and share with your loved ones. Till next time, bye.